My name is Denise. I welcome you all to NotPinkCon for those who you are just joining the session. I'm going to be your hostess alongside Sheila in this track. And our next talk, it's also in English, and that is why I'm presenting in English as well. But be sure to check our live translation channel on Discord, so don't miss out on that. I hope you are enjoying the conference so far. I definitely am. I'm so excited about presenting our next speaker because she comes from far, far away, and she's such a cool professional when it comes to cybersecurity. She's a PhD candidate in computer science, and she has an amazing blog. So be sure to check it out afterwards because she writes very detailed blogs on web applications and security in general. So be sure to check it out. Today, she's going to talk about web applications, particularly authorization in web applications. And she's going to dissect a very common type of vulnerability that is the IDOR vulnerability. But the truth is, a lot of people may not really understand what are the basics of these flaws and what are the consequences for the applications. So without further to say, I'd like to welcome Aisha to NotPinkCon.
Hi everyone. Today I will talk about attacking web application business logic and authorization. Okay, first I'd like to talk about who am I. My name is Ayşe Gündüz. I'm a PhD candidate at Computer Engineering Department in Istanbul, and I'm an active member of Women Developers of Turkey. I love and I'm a fan of application security and data science. I do Muay Thai in my free time. If you would like to follow me, you can either follow me on Twitter or Medium. Those are my usernames. Okay, let's talk about our table of contents. First, I will give brief information about web application architecture revolution, which is the difference between how was the architecture at the past and how is it today, the modern web architecture. And then we will talk about business logic. Then we will talk about authorization and authentication. And then I will give information about access control and insecure direct object references. Then I will try to elaborate the IDOR with real life examples. Then I will try to give some tips and tricks about how to hunt IDOR. And then, of course, I will try to explain the mitigation, how can we mitigate the IDOR vulnerability. Okay, back in 2000, everything was located in the same place. Everything is located at one code base. It's a monolithic architecture which opens to single point of failure. So what is single point of failure then? In single point of failure, anything fails in our system, the whole system fails. That's it. Okay, in this architecture, let's say that we have an e-commerce website and we started to popular, so we have more visitors and the traffic loads increases. So this architecture is not enough for us, we need more. So let's say that we migrate to this architecture. In this architecture, scalability comes into our life. And we have load balancer to forward the traffic. Why do we need? For example, when Black Friday comes in, our visitors and traffic loads increase so rapidly. And so only one web server is not enough for us. We need to forward the traffic between web servers. So at this point, load balancer comes into our life. But in this kind of architecture, we may have a synchronization problem. So I will try to give an example about it. Session information is stored into disk normally until the session ends in the web server's disk, in default, of course. So if, for example, we have user A, and user A is validate username and password, and this session, and then session is created and session is stored into web server 1's disk. When the load is high, the next time user A came with the same session information, if load balancer forward user A's traffic to web server 2, we have a synchronization problem in this point because there's no session information for user A stored in web server 2. So that's a problem. How can we solve this? So we may solve this problem by storing this session information in DB, in database, but what about our query load then? For our database, of course. Since session is not a permanent object, when the session ends, we need to delete it. So it's even more load for our database. So we may need a better solution, better architecture, which is a modern web architecture. So in modern web architecture, we have, again, load balancer, web servers, but then we have API gateway, we have microservices, we have databases, more than one, and we have even memcached or Redis and S3 buckets. We have a lot of stuff, as you can see it in here. So it's a modern web. As we speak of memcached, I'd like to dig this point a little bit more. Previously, we talked about the issue by storing the session information. Where can we store it? How can we store it? How can we delete it later? So memcached is a key value storage and a fast memory. So we can store the session information into memcached, and then accessing the session information, storing the session information memcached won't be a big deal for our architecture in our system. So, for example, when a user comes into our system, it comes through, it comes through API gateway to memcached to check the session. And so when the session ends, we can delete it into memcached. And also, we talked about static files at the beginning, if you remember. We can store the static files into our S3 bucket in this architecture. So let's summarize everything. Let's talk about why are we talking about web applications past and today's architecture. At the past, everything worked together. And now everything is divided with bigger architecture. At the past, roles were reaching data directly. There was no difference between, there was nothing between the roles. So roles were reaching directly data. Now roles go to services, then services reaching the roles information and comes back with this information. We can, at the past, session was a problem, but today we're storing the session into past memories, like can be memcached, it can be Redis, and the session information comes through API gateway into memcached. So why am I talking about this? Let me explain it. Let's say we have users, which are customers for our e-commerce websites. So our customers may need to access their information, their data, right? But in today's world, even merchants may need to access some of the data of that customer, of that user. Some seller may need to use and access the same data, and even customer service may need if the customer has a problem, for example. Even marketing may need. So everybody needs to see the same data, and all of them are seeing these data through microservices. So as it can be seen, modern web architecture is multi-tier architecture, and we have a huge permission and authorization requirements, and sometimes there are issues, there are problems as well. Any kind of issue or vulnerability in microservices will turn into a problem, a security problem, a vulnerability for the system. So let's try to explain it in a better way. Let's summarize it. Today's modern architecture, user comes into our system, goes through load balancer, comes to API gateway, and go to the SQL proxy with username and password at first. And after validation is done and session created, it goes to the fast memory. We said that it can be memcached or Redis, and it's stored in here. And every time any traffic comes and goes, it uses microservices, obviously. And any vulnerability or problems, and most logical one, as we speak of about this in this presentation, it may affect the whole system. I mean, anything affects microservices, it will affect the whole system as a security problem, vulnerability. So that's the reason why I'm talking about the architecture. Today's architecture is bigger and distributed and everything, but we have microservices. We're using data through microservices, and anything happens, any problem happens in microservices, it can come back as a problem, as a vulnerability to the whole system. Okay, so far we talked about architectures, and we talked about the informations, the datas we're reaching, we're accessing, and I think it's the time talking about business logic, technical and logical vulnerabilities. So for technical vulnerabilities, I can give an example like SQL injection. Vulnerabilities like SQL injections can be detected automatically. So technical vulnerabilities are mostly can be detected mostly in an automatic way. For example, by using scanners. But logical vulnerabilities, on the other hand, are about our system's decision, the system's decision mechanism mostly, and they are hard to find in an automatedly, in an automatic way with scanners, for example. So when we speak of logical vulnerabilities, we can give an example. We can give IDOR as an example for logical. Okay, before dig into IDOR, I will try to make it clear for your eyes. I will try to make it clear the terms into your eyes. So let's talk about authentication and authorization, which are two different terms, but always confused. And so authentication is a validation of user's identity. In authentication, we're asking the user, who are you? We're asking the user to introduce to the system, for example. This is authentication. On the other hand, authorization consists of business rules, actually. In authorization, we're asking what actions the user is allowed. We're determining users' permissions. So when we speak of users' permission, talk about access control, I guess. Since we're clear about business rules, authorization, authentication, let's talk about what is access control. Access control can be explained in under three main topics. The first one is vertical access control. The second one is horizontal access control. And the third one is context-dependent access. For the first one, for the vertical one, we can say that it is the access control aims to control the restrictions to access functions according to the user roles. What am I talking about? For example, in our systems, like in the, as you can see it in the table, we have registered user, and our registered user only has an access right to reading a post in our systems. But on the other hand, moderator has many more of them, like creating a new post, reading the existing posts, updating the existing posts, but not deleting, obviously, in our system. So if our registered user is able to create a post, for example, then we have a problem about vertical access control, we can say that, and we may talk about insecure direct object reference at this. So if we clear about vertical access control, let's talk about horizontal access control. Horizontal access control, on the other hand, aims to control the accessing resources by users who have the same ability, which means we have two users in the same level. They can be two moderators, for example. And let's call them user A and user B. If user A, let's come back to e-commerce website and say that both users has orders. They are seeing these orders in order list HTML, let's say. They can list their orders. And user A and user B has the same role, and they can both see their own orders in order list HTML in their page in the website. But if user A can or able to see user B's orders, then it's a problem. It's a problem of horizontal access control. So what about context-dependent access control? It aims to control the restrictions specified for the user itself. For example, let's say that one user A bought a book in our website, and then user A paid the cost of the book, and then enter the information of address, and our e-commerce ship this book to the address of user A's. If after that, if user A is able to change the address information for the product which is already shipped, it's an issue for context-dependent access control. And it means that lack of authorization mechanisms, generally speaking. And any of them, if any access control has issue, we have an issue, then we can talk about insecure direct object reference in this point. So I have to say that insecure direct object reference is still in the OS Tab 10 under broken access control, if you check. So let's talk about insecure direct object references. Insecure direct object references, we said that cause if there's lack of ownership control, lack of authorization control, right? So let's talk about it more. As you can see it in here in the presentation, we have a table. We have two users in our table. The first one is user A, the second one is user B. There is order ID belongs to for each users, and they select some products and created an ordered list. Those are under the products column in the table. And under the table, you can see a relational database about into our website. For example, we have users table. There's a user ID, it's a full name when it is created, for example. Then we have orders table in here in our database scheme. And there's also an ID for orders, and it is a relation with user ID and with products as well. And also we have products table as well. So as we could see it in here, user A, let's say that user A and user B has the same, they're both registered users in the same role and has same capabilities. If user A is able to change the products for you in user B's orders, then we can talk about insecure direct object references. If user A is able to change the order ID, and when user A changes, can see the products belonging to this ID, then we're saying that it's an insecure direct object references vulnerabilities. So I will try to elaborate more with an example. Under user A and user B, there's two vulnerabilities, which is leads us order details page, and in order details page, user A and every user, but for our example, user A and user B can see their orders, can list their orders according to the order ID. So if we check this code block, then we can see more. We can learn more details about our codes, and we can see that if we have a problem in here, we can see that as well. As we could see in here, we have a function definition, which is order details. In the fifth line, we could see that we're getting orders according to the filtering by order ID. And in the eighth line, we get the order list, which has products in it, filtered by order ID. And then we're rendering it, we're listing the products in order details HTML according to the order ID. But we have a problem in here, as if you can see it in here. When a user visits order details HTML, there's no authorization check. It asks at the fifth line, it asks order ID directly without checking anything. So it's the lack of ownership control, we can say that. So, okay. So in here, for example, this is user A, which is me, let's say, and this is user B, which is another user in our e-commerce websites. I have an ID 10056, and my friend has the, user B is the other ID 10017. We have two different users, and I'm a hacker in here in the middle. So when I ask for my order lists with the ID of 10056, and when I intercept my request without reaching to the end, and if I am able to change the order ID and if it comes back with okay, and if I can see the order information belongs to 10017, it means that yes, there's an insecure direct object references vulnerability in here, which is an IDOR, which stands as IDOR. We have an IDOR in here, we can say that. Is it really that easy? Sometimes yes, but sometimes you need to dig more and more and more. But don't be afraid. I will talk about that as well. How can we dig it? Because there's a certain path you can follow at this point. You have to have at least 2 users for each role types, first of all. Then you have to list all endpoints and try to perform to exploit IDOR vulnerability for each endpoint, which is trying to perform equals to trying to perform CRUD operations over cross users. If any of the CRUD operation is successful, then you're successful finding IDOR, which means CRUD operation means create, read, update, delete operations. So let's talk about our real life example. The first one comes from Wine. At the past, we have a web application as Wine. So after that, Twitter bought it and closed it. But in July 11, at 2017, Riyal Islam Khan, I guess, name, found the IDOR vulnerability in Wine's website, and as you can see then here, the severity is critical. The security researcher is able to access all users' private information in this example. So let's dig in more because he wrote about it. So this is the URL of Wine, and there's the users profiles, I assume we're reaching, and the users profiles comes with user ID, it says in here. And he says that choose any user ID to get the information of that user, belong to that user, and you can collect the user IDs after that, and you can even see the private information like that. I will cut some of them and show you more. For example, you can see the Twitter ID, phone number, location, anything, email, IP addresses, platforms, anything about belong to that user. I mean, private information. This is critical, I guess. But you can ask me that, is it that simple really? If I change the ID information when I see the in the URL, if I can see the private information like this person did. Sometimes, as I told, sometimes yes, but sometimes no. So let's check another example, which is more hard to find the IDOR vulnerability. It comes from Uber. The AppSecure-In is a research is a security researcher, and he found IDOR vulnerability in Uber system. And with this vulnerability with IDOR, he said that account takeover is possible for any type of account. I mean, including riders, partners, and even Uber Eats. So, but how, right? Let's see. We have 2 APIs at this point to exploit the IDOR vulnerability for this example, for Uber's example. So we will talk about the first one first. There's a request, and the host is partnersuber.com. This is our first API, as I told you before. And it asks national phone number as a parameter. And when you write about a national phone number, the response under the request, there's response. The response, if you focus on the response message, it reveals sensitive information. In here, driver's ID, UI ID. So okay, we found one. Then let's go another API. It's also the second API. The hosts are same, but there's two different APIs in here we're talking about. The first one was asking phone number, but the second one is asking email information. And with email information, we're sending email information here. It comes back with a message, again with an UUID. The UUID is leaked in here. It's Uber's UUID with exchanging email information. So we had two APIs. One is asking phone number and gives us ID of the user. And the second one is asking email as a parameter and gives also ID, UUID of that user. And since we have leaked UUID information, we can replay the below requests with victims UUID in Uber. And as you could see in the 14th line, that it asks user UUID as a parameter in here, and host is bonjouruber.com. And here is the response. In our response, we can see many informations in here belong to any user role and user type in here. So we had two different endpoints which were giving us UUID, and another endpoint, which is this one, asking this UUIDs as a parameter, and return with information, private information of the user belong to that user UUID. So welcome. If you're able to hang on so far, everything is fine. So after this part, we will talk about hunting the IDOR, and I will talk about tips and tricks about hunting IDOR and try to explain some tools to make it easier. So far, we always talked about two different users in same roles or different roles, but we have talked about two users all the time about testing IDOR so far. But mostly we have more than two users. And when we're limited with our browser, then we don't have a clean test. We may confused and it can be messy. But with Autochrome is a Chromium browser. Let us have more than one user, and as you could see in here, each user has different colored in a different color. So for each type, you have different colors, so it let us clean test really. And we may have active concurrent sessions in here. It's lead us clean environment. So this is another one. Fox is a Autochrome for Firefox, we can say. But in the latest version, it is for Firefox and Burp Suite as well. You can add as an add-on on Firefox, or you can add as an extension in Burp Suite as well. It's the same. Everything is colored in each different user is colored in different colors, so it is easy to control, and it is easier to test the IDOR. Last one, but not least one, Automatrix is an extension in Burp Suite specifically. It can be added as another tab on Burp Suite from extensions. And you can create many users in many permission levels, and you can ask for the test for each one, and you can say that this is for read permission, this is for update permission, for example, and the colors means of different things. Like, for example, green said that this is legit, and red said that there can be vulnerability in here, check it. And also there's blue, I guess it's not shown and displayed in here. Blue said that it can be false positive. So there's only just one setback about auth matrix, which can occur in delete operation. Read and update operation works well, but naturally delete operation can be a bit problematic. So let's come back to order details examples. You remember we had user A, we had user B, both have products and their orders were different and the IDs were different, etc. And let's say that we ask to test auth matrix delete operation for user A and user B. And let's say that first tried to delete the user A order, which was 10056 with the order ID, which belonged to user A. And then let's say it is succeeded and the order is deleted. Then if auth matrix tried as user B and changed the order ID to 10056, which user B had 10017 order ID, let's say, and tries to delete user A's orders, for example. User B is trying user A's orders, trying to delete user A's orders, let's say, with auth matrix, we automate it. If it can't be deleted, it doesn't mean that there's no either. It means that we already deleted the order when we're testing for user A. When we see HTTP 400, it doesn't mean that there's no either. It means that it's already deleted. So naturally, delete operation can be a bit problematic for auth matrix, for automated test to automated way. Okay, let's talk about mitigations. Either is a complex vulnerability, let's accept that. And also finding a mitigation for IDOR to mitigate IDOR is a bit complex, but it's possible, of course. The main point of IDOR is insufficient access control. So roles and their business rules should have been defined well, and you can do necessary tests with auth matrix kind of tools. So if you do that, then there won't be IDOR vulnerability. But even if you did that, or you forget something, then IDOR may occur when for example, authorization check is forgotten to reach an object in this. So you can use randomly generated UUIDs instead of ID information, auto-incremental ID information. So in this case, you can store it into DB. So in this case, even if IDOR occurs in your system, the attacker or intruder, whatever you say, can't guess the next UUID because it's random UUID. So the last one, sometimes it can be really hard to apply first and second step on huge applications like legacy applications, usually. So you have auto-incremental object IDs in your system. In this point, you can apply a hash function with salt and put a hash map, create a hash map as a key value pair, and you can store them into session, and when the session ends, will be deleted, of course. So there's a function, built-in function for that, or you can create it, of course, as you can see it in here. The first one is random access reference map, which creates hash value, and the other one get direct reference. When you give the hash value, you can get the real value, and the last one is get indirect reference, which is when you give the real ID, you can get the hash ID. So in here, instead of ID information, we expose the corresponding UUID information, as we could check in the example. We have random access reference map. We have we give order as a parameter. It creates a map object, and with this map object, we can store it into our session. And when we need our order ID, we can use get direct reference with UUID information, of course, and we can get the order ID information. So in this way, we're proxying the data and storing into the server side, of course. In this way, it became harder to learn the order ID, since we have UUID again instead of the ID itself. So that's all, folks. Thanks for listening. And if you'd like to follow me, again, you can follow me on either Twitter or Medium. I'm waiting for the questions. Bye.
What an amazing talk. Didn't I tell you this was going to be amazing? I was so excited. There was a reason for this. And now I'm happy to announce that we have Aisha here with us. So welcome you to NotPinkCon live, and so we can answer all the questions. Please, if you in the audience want to ask questions, you can do it either via Twitch, or you can also use the questions channel on our Discord server. So, okay, questions are actually popping in.
Yeah.
We got one. Is in a few words, and with all your experience, how much do you trust mainstream web apps in regards of your personal information, like Twitter, Amazon, Facebook, Twitch?
Okay, I don't. I don't. But there's nothing that we can do for that, I guess. Everything is processing our data, and everything has our data. Even our government has our data, and even some applications are selling our data. So I don't, but I don't know what we can do about it right now. It's a matter of privacy, but it's like nobody's respecting.
Totally. Like we have to find a way to empower users to demand rights when it comes to privacy and data security, right?
Exactly.
Well, some people are asking for you to revisit what a logical vulnerability is.
Okay, I can explain that one, I guess. The difference between the technical and logical vulnerability is we're not finding the logical vulnerabilities in our source code. I mean, we cannot, how can I explain? For example, SQL injection is a technical vulnerability, not a logical one, and it's mostly about a vulnerability happened into our source code. But the insecure direct object references, on the other hand, is a logical vulnerability. It's mostly about the decision of web application. It's mostly the problem in the decision mechanism in our web application. This is the logical vulnerability I think we can describe it.
Amazing. It's so clear. And I was talking to you backstage that if you wanted to
Yeah.
share about information about your blog, because you write so much
Mhm.
about this, that I think maybe the audience might be interested in actually visiting it afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Since I'm a PhD candidate right now, an academical student, I'm trying to write technical as much as possible, and some of them are related to machine learning, deep learning stuff, and some of them are related to security stuff. And so far, I couldn't write a lot of blog posts, but I do as much as I could. So if you would like to check the my blog post, you can check from the Medium I shared, and also I can share it in Discord as well, the link, I mean.
That's great. Yeah, that would be amazing. We get another question that says, what framework do you recommend to start to know more about access control?
Where is it? I couldn't see it.
It's on,
I couldn't. Okay. On Twitch. I wanted to see what framework you recommend to start to know more about access control. I guess I don't have a recommendation about it.
okay.
I don't think that I can recommend the framework specifically.
Yeah, I think it's more like a set of tools that you
Yeah.
can use. There's so many different workshops. For the audience, if you're interested, there we have a group that's called Let's Be with InfoSec, a different server, and we have different channels also in our NotPinkCon server, where you can post different resources about different topics on information security. So if any of you have any recommendations when it comes to access control or platforms or tools that you want to share, you may want to post it on this different channels that we have prepared for you to have this discussion and to continue this Q&A that we are now having live with Aisha. Okay, should applications move out the authorization logic to external components?
I don't think that I can say that you should, but if you, I mean, you can, of course, but you have to be, you have to prepare the logic in a proper way, I think.
Okay, yeah, I get it. Let's see if we have any more questions. Everybody is crazy about your talk. We have so many comments.
Thank you so much.
People loved it. We knew they would because it was amazing. Like we saw the post.
Thank you so much.
Yes, this is gonna work so well. So last chance for anyone who wants to post questions in either channel. And meanwhile, I'm gonna say that I'm so happy that you are a part of this conference. I believe you really like Buenos Aires. Someone told me, Sol told me.
So much.
I'm so sad that you didn't.
I told that I want to live for a while in Buenos Aires, I guess, like 6 months or something. I love the city, really.
Well, that would be an experience, and you are welcome. If you want to come, you are totally welcome. You have to text us.
I have friends right now that I won't be alone when I come in there.
Totally. You have so many friends and people waiting for you, and perhaps we can organize another chat about web application logic.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an amazing conference that you're organizing. I mean, the whole process was so meticulous and flawless. I have to say that. Congrats.
Oh, that means a lot to us, seriously, because we have worked so much for so long to make this happen. So thank you. Thanks to the audience that's behind the screens being part of this conference. And we also want to extend our support and our thoughts to all the women in Turkey who are having such a rough time when it comes to the violation of their civil and human rights. So also extend all of our love and support to these women. And we're going to be posting different links on our lobby and different channels on Discord to make awareness, create awareness about this topic. So thank you all for joining in. We're going to a short break, and then we are going to continue with more NotPinkCon talks.